All right, so for this video, I just wanted to make a video talking about just a quick idea that flashed into my head because I was looking at I was watching a video about reptilians on BitChute as one does, um, and I realized that there are a lot of references, especially if you look at like the different cultures that talk about reptilians. They talk about reptilians living in underground cities, like the Hopi Indians, for example, talk about thousands of reptilians living in underground cities, right? And you look at like the tunnel systems, like the secret tunnel systems, that are most definitely used in order to travel between military bases, or you look at like the Cold War tunnels that they built, and I think they use that for human trafficking too. I mean, you look at how many kids go missing every year. They definitely, I think the military is definitely involved in human trafficking to of children primarily to the underground bases, stuff like that. But the idea that I wanted to talk about was basically that are those underground sort of dwelling places of the reptilians? Is that like the basis for like the classic depiction of hell, right? Because I'm thinking of like the parallels between like in this documentary called Above Majestic. There were like these whistleblowers, like they talk about bases in Antarctica, right? And they talk about how some of the reptilian entities, they live near geothermal vents, right? Like holes in the Earth's crust that link to like the magma and like the lava and like underneath, right? Like the molten rock, right? And I was thinking that that is very similar to the depiction of hell, right, where it's like fire and brimstone and everything's hot and it's underground and like a cavern, and then you have like the demons with the pitchforks and everything else, right? And you look at the similarity between demons, right? Like the depiction of demons is very similar to like the reptilian, to like the Draco reptilian depiction, right? Because you have reptilian descriptions of like these malevolent entities all the time in the sacred texts. You have demons classically being depicted with slit eyes, the reptilian slit eyes. They also have like the dragon wings. They have the horns, right? Which is like and even dragons. That's a reference to the Draco reptilians, right? Dragons, Draco reptilian. How like the crest of the royal family has dragons on it, and they have like dragon. And think about like the gargoyles and like the dragon statues that they all have, right? So I was thinking about that, and I think that there may be a link between like how like how we typically think of like hell as like a place of like fire and brimstone, and it's all underground, and there's all these demonic entities, and these sort of underground dwelling places, these hiding places, these underground cities, as the Hopi Indians describe them, like these hiding places of the Draco reptilians, right? Yet again, near geothermal vents where it's very hot because apparently they like high temperatures, very much like people who keep pet reptiles, right? They have like a sun lamp on them all the time because they're cold blooded, right? So they need the warmth, especially if it's like in Antarctica, right, where it's all cold and everything else. So I was just thinking that there may be a link between the classic depiction of hell is like fire, brimstone. It's a hot place. It's underground, filled with demons, and maybe people's actual encounters with Draco reptilians in these underground cities, in these hidden tunnel systems, near the geothermal vents where there's lots of like magma and like molten rock and everything else. So I think there may be a link between those two. But yeah, I just wanted to get the idea while it's hot, just present that because and I definitely think that there is a link between that and like the Hollow Earth as well. Like this idea that there's more underneath the Earth, there's more underground than they're telling us, and yet again, like this cabal, like this group, the sort of like X Files syndicate that's running the world, right? This New World Order. They use tunnel systems to travel between the underground bases. Like they use them to traffic people, and of course you look at like the tunnels underneath the synagogue in New York, right? So there's a lot of like underground activity that I think they're not telling us about. And I think there are on top of the tunnel systems, maybe like the structure of the Earth is very different than what they tell us, right? Yeah, and I've talked about like flat Earth in the past. I don't think it's flat. I think that it's more. I think it's more likely that the Earth is hollow. Or and there's also like the other theory, which is that like everything that's on the world maps is surrounded by the ice walls, and like that is like a smaller part of like a larger planet, right? But I mean, obviously I think that we do have to leave it open. I think that because they lie about everything. I mean, like the Earth might be in the shape of an avocado for all we know, with how much they lie about everything, everything in the education system, and everything that they like the sources of information that the 99% have access to is so doctored and so filled with such misinformation that they lie about everything, and I think they lie about a lot of it, not only to cover up the true nature of this reality, but I think they might lie about other things just because they can. I mean, I think about like psychopaths, right? They're compulsive liars. So I think that there may be stuff in the education system that they just lie about just because they can. Um, yeah, that was an interesting idea that I just had. The classical depiction of hell is like fire and brimstone. It's a hot place underground filled with demons, and the description of reptilians residing in underground cities, in hidden tunnel systems near geothermal vents where there's fire and brimstone, so to speak, or it's just molten rock and it's very hot, right? Yet again, like the reptilians are cold blooded, so they have to have like they have to have places of high heat in the same way that if you go to like the reptile house in like a zoo, like all of the reptilians, all of like the reptilian animals have like a sun lamp on them because they need heat, right? So I think that would explain like the classic depiction of hell in like the biblical sense, is that that might be like an account of something that someone actually experienced, by whether accidental or like they found like these underground cities and these hidden tunnel systems, and they encountered these draco reptilians, and they said, "Oh my gosh, like I'm in hell. I'm with these demons, and it's hot, and it's underground, and like there's fire and brimstone, and like they're torturing humans to death." To to feed off of their adrenochrome and to feed off of the loosh, which is I believe that that's also a big part of like the tunnel systems being connected to like the synagogues, right? Is that like they might offer sacrifices that these demons take deep underground into these underground cities and into these underground dwelling places, and then they sacrifice the people in order to get that adrenochrome and in order to get that loosh. And primarily I think it's children, right? Because they do target children. They do target divinity, which means children. Because they're more connected to the divine, right? They haven't experienced as much pain as like an adult has, right? And I think Alex Collier also mentions. Sorry, like, I'm chewing gum right now, right? I'm trying to keep it to the side, right? But I remember watching a video about like Alex Collier. He talks about how like they also prefer children because they're not as contaminated, with corn syrup and like the fluoride in the water and like the microplastics and the stuff that they put in the food and everything else, right? So, but yeah, I definitely think that there is a link between like the Hollow Earth, the hidden tunnel systems, and like the classic depiction of hell. And I just wanted to sort of point that out. It's sort of an idea that just flashed into my head, as I was watching a video about that stuff. But yeah, that's the video.